Hi guys, it's Tom Shue here, and today I'm going to be helping out one of our readers by the name of Harry. He's got some questions about Lightroom, Photoshop, and Capture One. Now, each one of the softwares has its strengths and weaknesses. Now, Photoshop you want to look at as a professional single image editing tool. It's designed to work with single images. However, it has added the ability to mess with videos. Now, Lightroom to me is like the world's best software for cataloging metadata, printing module. You can create slideshows. It can do all kinds of things that Photoshop can't do, and it can do a lot of things that Photoshop can do. For example, it's a raw processor. Inside Photoshop, there's a module called Camera Raw. Camera Raw is embedded in Lightroom. However, they use the interface a little differently. So, the same processing engines available in both, it's just implemented differently. Now, Capture One, for example, it's a piece of software that's a raw converter, but it doesn't import your files as easily as, say, Lightroom. It doesn't handle your files as easily as Lightroom, and you have to create your file structure the way you want. You have to create sessions each time you want to work with files. So it's not as intuitive to use in that manner. However, if you're using it for tethering, or just like image capture when you're creating the images, like on location or in the studio, it's the #1 go-to piece of software for me, right? It does things that Lightroom doesn't do. Okay, it's just that simple. Now, if you have specific questions about each one of the packages, I'll be happy to answer. For example, Harry asked about levels. Now, you can get away with doing levels inside of Lightroom. However, it doesn't offer masking or layer masks, which are one of the hugest benefits of using Photoshop. For example, let's go ahead and adjust levels right here inside of Lightroom. If you hold down the Alt key, and that's the Option key on the Mac, and you grab your black slider, you can see we can set a black point. We're adjusting the blacks just like you would be in levels. Okay. Now you can do that without the Alt key, but with the Alt key, it shows you right when you start to clip it. Now, if you look right here on this slider, once this gray line reaches to the top, you've completely clipped the blacks. Okay? Let's turn that black highlight indicator off. Now, so you'll see that it'll start to creep up the side of the histogram, and it's saying, hey, it's clipping the blue channel because the blue's running up there, and then the gray goes up, and it says, okay, it's completely clipped. Well, those are solid black points in your scene. So you want to back it off to where you don't have a black point or a solid black, or you could create a solid black if you wanted to. Just find somewhere where it would be black without detail and let it be that. Now, same thing with whites. If you hold down the Alt key, that's the Option key on the Mac, and you slide up the slider, you'll get your white point. We'll back that off because we don't want something solid white. And as far as overall midtone is concerned, I would use the brightness slider. Now, the brightness slider is a little different. I call this the overall fine-tune adjustment, which would be the exposure slider. Okay? Now, I'm going to show you how this would work inside Photoshop. So to get to Photoshop, we're going to export this file. You can right-click and choose Export, or hit Control-E as in Edward, or Command-E on a Mac, which I've just done, and it will hand this file off into Photoshop. So now that it's handed the file into Photoshop, we're going to be working in layers. So we're always going to create a safety net by duplicating the layer, and that's Control-J or Command-J on a Mac. That gives us our layer. And if you come down here to this little circle with a slice through it, like a half circle, and we choose levels. Now, I don't use levels very much because of the fact that I don't think it's a very intuitive way to work. I use curves. I just did a tutorial on using curves, and you can look at that on the blog. However, I'll show you how levels works. Down at the bottom of your levels, you have what are your threshold. So if you create a black point, you say that that's as dark as you want your darkest black to be, you could set it there. Say, for example, there. Now, whenever you adjust your blacks, it will never go any lighter than where you set your threshold. For example, there's the original black slider, and you can see that now we can get as dark as we want, and then when we lighten it up, it will go as light as white. So again, if we set our threshold there, you can see that we can never get any darker or any lighter in the dark area than where our threshold is set. So this is what these two controls are down here. Same with the brightness. So here you have your controls. There's your black point slider, just like in Lightroom. Here's your white point slider, just like in Lightroom. And then here's your overall for your midtones. Okay? And I was using the brightness slider to mimic that. So, say for example, we wanted to adjust our black point. So we bring in our blacks till we get our dark point. And say we're trying to darken the water, for example, and maybe a little bit of the trees. I'll show you how you do that. You darken there. And if we wanted to brighten up the brights a little bit, there's the whites in the scene. Okay, and then if we wanted to adjust the midtones down a little bit, we're going to move to the right. Okay, so now everything's dark except our subject's too dark now. Remember, we were trying to just do this to the water. This is where you see the power of Photoshop. With this layer mask involved, maybe we like the darkness of the sky too. With this layer mask that's created when you give this a levels adjustment layer, if you grab the brush tool, we're going to be painting in black. You see we're black here? If you don't have the black swatches, if you hit the D key, say for example, say you had maybe something like this. If you hit the D key, it will go to default, which is white over black. And to switch the swatches, you hit the X key. Okay. Now with X, with the black on top, with the layer mask selected, we can come in here and we can paint. Now make sure opacity is at 100%. Okay, and we can come here and paint on our subjects, and we can remove all that darkness off of them. Okay, I'm just going to rough this in for now. So we remove this off of them. Okay, and maybe we want to take some off this trees, but we want to remove 100%. Look at the opacity with this brush set. If we hit the 5 key, that gives us a 50%. If we hit the 3 key, 30, and the 8, 80%. So you kind of get the idea. So say if we want to remove 50% of that layer mask, we can. So we can like brighten these trees up a little bit here. And this is the power of Photoshop, is that we get to control the opacities of each one of the adjustments. Okay. Now if you want to see where your layer mask, say this duck is too dark here, we lost all the detail, we can come in here and help these ducks again. Okay. Now if you hit the backslash key, you can see where your layer mask has been applied. Okay. And then you can get rid of it. So if we got a little bit over here, we're going to hit the X key and switch it to white, and we'll come in and remove some of this off. Now we want to be at 100%, so I'm going to hit the O key. If you look at the opacity on my brush, you can see that it's back to where it was. We got a little sloppy here when we originally did it. I'm going to hit the X key again, and I'm just going to come back in and add a little bit more to her. So that's it. We're going to go ahead and hit the backslash key again to get rid of that layer mask, and now you can see the before and the after with levels. So that's it. I want to thank you for taking time to visit today, and hopefully I helped answer some of your questions. Let's go ahead and crop this thing. This thing's driving me crazy. Grab the crop tool, and I'm going to grab the straighten, and I'm just going to come right across this area right here, and that's going to straighten us up. We're going to hit enter, and it will have fixed it. Crop. There you go. Hit this. Hit the S key, Control S or Command S on a Mac. We're going to save it, or you can do File Save. Saving it down here. It's going to hand us back into Lightroom, and we'll be good to go. So now that's it. Thanks for taking time to visit today, and until next time, we'll see you soon.